Hello.
Hi. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and start the Washoe County Regional Water Commission meeting Wednesday, March 20th at 9 o'clock. Well, actually, I apologize. It's 9:02. I'm going to be filling in for Chairwoman Dewar. She's delayed this morning, so apologize for the late start, but we'll go ahead and get started here with the Pledge of Allegiance. Actually, would you mind starting us this morning with the pledge? Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Do you want to call roll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm off to a rough start. I forgot roll call. Are we here?
Do I have to sit back down? Is that... Dear Lord.
All discombobulated this morning, so we'll start with a roll call, please.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
Christopher Dare.
Here.
Susan Sever. Here. Paul Anderson.
Here.
Naomi Durr. Mary Louise Garcia.
Here.
Jenny Breckes. Alexis Hill. Donald Abbott.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Clara, would you mind starting us off, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 3, public comment. And before we get there, we have a statement that we'd like to read.
You can join the meeting by typing zoom.us into your computer browser, clicking join on the Zoom website, and entering the meeting ID 840-7605-9942. This option will require a computer with audio and video capabilities. You can also join the meeting via telephone by dialing 1-719-359-4580, entering the meeting ID and pressing pound. Please mute and unmute phones by dialing *6. The public may sign up to speak during the public comment period or on a specific agenda item in person by completing a public comment information request to speak card and submitting it to the clerk, or virtually by raising the virtual hand icon in the Zoom platform, or if attending by phone, dialing *9 to notify the clerk. Note, dialing *9 on the phone will both raise a virtual hand and lower it.
All right, thank you very much. So with that being said, do we have any public comment this morning? No public comment. All right, thank you. Move on to item number 4, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item number 5, approval of the minutes from the January 18, 2024 meeting of the Western Regional Water Commission. Any comments, questions, additions, changes? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, thank you.
Second.
All right, we have the first and second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, Donald, for joining. All right, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Number 6, presentation on the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership. And good morning, Kara. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
This is gonna stay up. Good morning, Cara Steelen from Tumwa for the record. I am here today to give you some updates on the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership. Several of you have seen a very similar presentation to this at the Tumwa board meeting a few months ago, so I apologize for the redundancy, but I'll go quickly. Can I control it, Jen, or do you have to? Or okay, great. Okay, so this is. If you recall, a memorandum of understanding was signed between these 5 entities in the fall of 2022 to create the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership, which is a mouthful. I'll just call it the partnership from here on out. So we are working together with the Tahoe National Forest, the Truckee River Watershed Council, the National Forest Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, and then Tumwa to complete forest management work in the headwaters to increase the pace and scale of that work. And you can see from the map here, it entails the Middle Truckee River watershed, which basically goes from the outlet of Lake Tahoe to the California-Nevada state line. It's where all of our water supply reservoirs are located besides Lake Tahoe. So it's a really critical area of the watershed for our community's drinking water supplies. And in the green on the map, you can see that the Tahoe National Forest manages over 260,000 acres of land in the watershed. So we are focused on doing work in the U.S. Forest Service lands, but also looking for nexuses to work with private landowners and also state landowners in the watershed as well. Next slide, please. So here are our partnership goals that were identified in the Memorandum of Understanding. The intent really is to complete multi-benefit projects that support the goals of all the partners involved. So looking at everything, obviously forest health and resilience benefits all partners, as does reducing the risk of high-severity wildfires. Some of the other partners are obviously very interested in protecting the communities around the town of Truckee. And from TOMWA's perspective, we're interested in protecting and securing our water supplies, both from a quality and a quantity perspective. And so, next slide, please. Just a little more detail on what we're concerned about and why. There's obviously been a lot of large-scale wildfires in the Sierra Nevada, especially in 2020 and 2021. And that kind of brought this issue to our attention. A lot of other water utilities around the West are partnering with the Forest Service to increase the pace and scale of forest management work to try to decrease the chance of catastrophic fires from happening in the watersheds. And so what we're really concerned about from a water perspective is what would happen if there was a very large fire. And so a lot of times after fires, especially catastrophic fires, you'll see sedimentation and erosion, debris flows, flash flooding, decreased water quality, increased water treatment costs as a result, and also harmful algal blooms, which can be difficult to treat. And so you can see here, this is actually an example from Colorado. Denver Water kind of pioneered a lot of this work, partnering with the Forest Service because they've had really extreme fires and a lot of water quality and quantity impacts as a result. But you can see this example photo, same stream, pre and post fire. And you can just see the amount of nutrients going into that stream have really degraded the water quality and it's a large concern. So what are we doing in this region? Next slide, please. So we are working on we have completed a 10-year vegetation management plan. And so it includes specific project descriptions, challenges and opportunities, our project selection methods, and cost estimates for planning and implementation. Again, this was developed through the partnership, so it took us about 1.5 years to put all these little dots on a map. We used pretty extensive modeling that was done by the Truckee River Watershed Council and the Nature Conservancy to identify these areas, and basically we're trying to target 62,000 acres of forest management forest treatment over the next 10 years. The map shows the distribution of projects that the partnership's prioritized, and they will all include basically ecologically based mechanical and hand thinning, restoration work, prescribed burning, and invasive species removal. Some of the projects were already underway, so since all of these projects are occurring on federal land, they have to go through the NEPA process. So some of those projects have already been planned. That's under the prior projects kind of category there. Some are our initial projects that we're starting to work on as a partnership, and then the upcoming projects are kind of further out, kind of 5+ years out. And so again, the goal is to create a healthy functioning forest ecosystem that's resilient to wildfires. Next slide, please. And since I'm not a forester, I think this slide is helpful to show of what we're talking about when we're talking about projects. This diagram here shows kind of before fuels reduction and after fuels reduction. So really the intent is to reduce a lot of the smaller ladder fuels that could get a fire up into the crown of the trees, and decrease a lot of the lower, smaller diameter trees, and also increase spacing. So our forests throughout the Sierra Nevada are really overgrown and too dense. And so the work all is basically, the intent is to create lower intensity, lower severity fires. Next slide, please. The project status here just kind of shows where we're at. These are projects that are currently underway, and their website there, truckeeforests.org, is really great. There's actually an interactive map you can go in. It's based on the map I showed you earlier that has all of the dots for the project areas. You can click on them and actually see more information about who's funding the project, who's implementing the project, and kind of the timeline and status. And if the environmental planning has been complete, you can access that information there as well. So really recommend looking at that if you're interested. Next slide, please. And today I'm going to just focus a little bit on the Ladybug project. This was TUMWA's pilot project. In March 2022, TUMWA's board approved $500,000 to be allocated to the Ladybug project to help fill a funding gap. And you can see that there are various different funders, and by filling that funding gap, we were able to ensure they were able to complete that whole project. And it's currently underway. Next slide, please. So from the map here, you can see that the Ladybug project is located on the northeast corner of Stampede Reservoir. And again, like I mentioned before, it includes mechanical and hand fuels reduction work, commercial thinning, and a prescribed fire. And it's a 2,500 acre project. And in 2023, the National Forest Foundation is actually implementing this project. They were able to get a contractor on board, and they did 465 acres of hazardous fuels reduction work, including the mastication of trees up to 16 inches. So that means they're just grinding up those trees and actually leaving that the debris on the forest floor, but it's not as likely to burn. Next slide, please. And so here's some examples. So you can see that this is from the Ladybug project from August of 2023. And there's actually, it's hard to see on the slide, but there's a lot of trees that are marked in blue, and those will be taken out next year to increase the spacing between those trees. So to create a much healthier forest, but you can see it's already looking really good. They were able to go in and remove some of those lower diameter trees, and then also a lot of that lower ground cover. Next slide, please. Same here, you can see they've taken out a lot of those smaller diameter trees. Like I said, they could do 16 inches and lower with the machinery they had this past year, and then they'll go in and actually cut down trees next year. Next slide, please. And that's when I'm talking about the masticating trees. They actually go in with this equipment here, and they're able to just grind the trees up and then leave it there. It would be better, ideally, to take all the material out, but it's incredibly expensive to remove all of all of the trees, and so this is a really good alternative. Unfortunately, in this region, there's not a huge market for a lot of this timber, which is kind of a holdup for work throughout the Sierra Nevada for fuels reduction work. So that's something you'll hear about a lot when you hear about this work, because there's not a lot of mills, and there's not a lot of biomass facilities. So that's an alternative, is leaving some of the materials in the forest. Okay, so funding. So in our 10-year plan, really preliminary estimates for doing these planning and treating these 62,000 acres is $120 to $140 million. It is expensive work. It doesn't really pay for itself like it used to, because again, there's not really a market for that timber, or not as much of a market for the timber. And the planning work is also quite extensive because of all the environmental planning each project has to go through. The NFF, on behalf of the partnership, received an $8.3 million grant from the California Wildlife Conservation Board last year, and that's going to be used to treat about 2,000 acres of the Five Creeks project, which is along the Highway 89 corridor just north of Tahoe City. So that's a really critical area. Obviously, the river flows through there. If a fire went through that, it's quite steep slopes, and so that's going to be starting next year. And then there's also money allocated for about 6,000 acres of additional planning work. And then the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation allocated about 200,000 acres for the Alder 89 project, which is north of the town of Truckee on Highway 89. And also they're going to start exploring the use of targeted grazing with sheep at the Big Jack East project, which is near Prosser Reservoir. So lastly, just kind of wanted to summarize, it's making the connection between why TUMWA's involved in forest management work is sometimes hard, but it's really critical, since all of our water supply, 80 to 85% of our water supply comes from that area. And this partnership's been really critical to incentivize creative strategies to accelerate the forest management in our region. And we're following in the footsteps a lot of other utilities that have done the same. Placer County Water Agency on the west slope, as well as Yuba County. They're doing great work as well in our region. So TUMWA funding has been really helpful to fill a funding gap, and the implementation partners are able to use that funding more flexibly than they are other funding, such as state or federal funding, and that's been helpful for them to not have spend down deadlines or other, restrictions tied to the funding. And it's also been used to help get that, the larger grants, which is what we really want that funding to be used for. So it's local cash match that can be used to leverage these large state and federal dollars. And it's also, TOMWA involvement's been really key. A lot of these grant agencies want to see larger partnerships now and increased benefits as opposed to just forest resilience. So having a water utility involved shows that there's, additional community benefits. And so in 2024, our goals as a partnership are to expand public and agency knowledge about the partnership, really get the word out about the work that's going on to garner additional support and funding. Obviously, we're going to continue to plan and implement projects, and we have a big goal of $120 to $140 million over the next 10 years. So we want to continue to seek funding for planning and implementation. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. Questions?
Yeah, good job, Cara. I think it's fantastic and is even better the second time, so it's all
Oh, good. Sorry for the redundancy.
Oh, it's all good, actually. I think we have to, for our million people watching on Zoom, the collaboration is the key to this, and we could never do it by ourselves. I can't imagine trying, but it is essential. I did have one question. Have we ever considered some of the smaller little trees that are growing, to transplant them? Like Rotary, we are constantly planting trees all over this region and trying to get them, and we get them from different people. But I don't know, it might be a worthwhile consideration. I don't know, maybe the Rotarians would be willing to go dig them up if needed. Right now, we're not allowed to do that because that's,
Right.
you don't go to U.S. Forest and dig up trees. So I'm not saying that. But if we had permits to do so or something to work, because I know we're grinding them down and saying that they're dangerous to the bigger, but what if we somehow come to a balance? I just know we all want to be tree cities. We want more trees. We want to see that happen. So just a thought to throw at you.
Absolutely, not something I don't think we've considered, but we'll definitely, see if anyone else is pursuing that.
Member Garcia?
Thank you. This is the first time I've seen the presentation.
good.
So I see that there's 4 different counties, 2 different states. Is that creating any complications for funding? And second question is, are there any other smaller water utilities that are involved?
Great questions. So currently, we've decided to keep the core team of the partnership fairly small with the 5 entities that signed the MOU. We do have a larger stakeholder group that we meet with twice a year, and that includes Placer, Nevada, and Sierra counties. We haven't included Washoe County just because none of the work is actually happening within Washoe County. But it hasn't, so far it hasn't created too many issues. Nevada County actually is going to start implementing some work this year, kind of on behalf or in conjunction with the partnership. And so, so far it hasn't created issues. I think everyone's really excited about this kind of work right now, and there's a lot of momentum behind it. So that's been really helpful.
Any other questions? I just have one then. So when you look at the dollar figure, 120 million, 140 million, that's big. Is there anything, studies that have been done that if we don't take these preventive measures, what's the cost to the economy? What's the cost to a community for not doing this work and indeed a fire comes through and ruins a watershed?
That is a great question, and we are currently kind of starting to work and go down that path of trying to figure out what the impacts would be from an economic perspective. Other water utilities have done that for sure, because I think you have to create that business case.
Yeah, thank you, because that's a lot easier sell when you go, okay, wait a minute, yes, it costs a lot of money, but here's what we would be losing in our community as a result. So
Absolutely.
Awesome, I appreciate you guys working on that.
Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have something along those lines.
All right, I'll hold you to it.
Okay,
So
sounds
December?
good. December 2024. Okay.
All right,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you all so
Wonderful
much.
report.
One more quick one, and it just has to do a follow-up. Ms. Garcia asked about if there's any other water.
Right, sorry.
And I only say that because it's kind of important, because we're putting money in as our water, so it's a good question. But I do want to, I think, probably answer it a little bit. But this is our area in the sense this is our reservoirs. So even if there's another water thing, are there other water groups that are taking water out of our reservoirs?
So the other TROA parties are involved. So it would be, State of California, which is, they are involved in other ways with funding this work, and then State of Nevada, and then Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, and then the U.S. government with the, Truckee Carson Irrigation District and all of that. So we haven't really approached other downstream entities yet, and then there aren't really other water utilities involved. I mean, Truckee doesn't take water from the river, but they are involved. Truckee Fire Protection District is doing a lot of work up there, and they just created a measure, and they're funding a lot of work as well. So, but we are looking, I think this year, at expanding the partnership and seeing who else would want to be involved and expanding our stakeholder group. So yeah, I think that's a great point. It's definitely something we are considering of who else is using this water and who else could provide some funding.
All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you all.
All righty, cruising right along. We're going to move down to number 7, presentation on comprehensive regional water management plan review and update schedule. Kim, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the commission. It's beautiful this morning. So I just wanted to give a quick overview to you. I'll be working with the Water Planning Commission moving forward to refine the schedule, but I wanted to bring this before you multiple times so that you're aware of the planning effort. It's really a regional, broad planning effort, and the more that the board is aware when things come up, that the process is happening, I think you'll be able to answer questions when they come up. So the Regional Water Management Plan is this document right here. It's pretty thick, has a lot of history in the document, and we're legislatively required to update that, review it every 5 years and update as recommended by the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. And so our deadline for the overall review and update this go-round will be January 1st, 2026. So you can imagine we're starting this in 2024. For a 2026 update, it's a pretty extensive process. Next slide. All right, so a little bit of background. I don't want to belabor background because this plan has been in place for over 2 decades. Initially, the regional comprehensive water planning and management started to evolve and come together around 1983. The regional entities got together, and there had been some droughts, there's water supply challenges that they were facing, and they got together and petitioned to the legislature to create a regional body that would be able to look at and outline what are the water planning management strategies that are currently in place, and what are, to identify future water supplies into the future to meet the population demands. And so they created the Regional Water Planning Commission in 1995, and that was operated under Washoe County, similarly to how we're operating now. 2 plans were actually, the first plan developed was in 1995. Immediately it had 2 amendments because that plan, as it was evolving, was kind of a starting point for the Regional Water Management Plan. And so they included very quickly some water conservation plans, and some modifications to projects that were going on in the area through those 2 amendments. They reviewed the plan according to statute in 2004, and then 2 more subsequent amendments as things evolved. Then you'll see that this body was created in 2007 under the WRWC Act, and the very first addition to the plan was to be completed by January 1st, 2011. They had an interim update in 2009 because of the statute. I don't know if you've had a chance to review the statute. It's quite extensive, and the content of the plan was really broadened at that time. And so the 2009 amendment was a process to bring it to a doable interim plan, and then have the really robust comprehensive plan completed by 2011. And so that was really what we're calling the first addition to the plan. The second edition was done at the 5-year review point in 2016. The third edition, I came on board, if you'll recall, in 2021 and helped to kind of wrap that up, and that was just a minor review and update of the plan. So this review and update will be a little bit more robust. We're looking at trying to memorialize some of the historical context that's in the plan, really focus on what's current, what's moving forward, and to try to develop some tools that data becomes very outdated as soon as your plan's adopted, some of the data is kind of dated. So we're really going to focus on revisioning how we represent the data that's in the plan, keeping it current, creating some digital tools, really using our website, which we're hopefully getting launched soon, as a means for the board and agency staff and the public to come and see, what's going on with water planning. And so it's not memorialized in a hard copy plan, but we have tools that can keep them updated on a regular basis. Next slide. Thank you. So I included in your agenda packet attachment 7A. In the staff report, I outlined some key steps. And the primary key steps in having this process be successful and really comprehensive and including all the agencies' concerns and edits is to really engage our stakeholders. So there's a lot of topics that are addressed in this plan. And those are items 1 through 14 of attachment 7A. I didn't really want to spend time going through all those. They're really the water planning topics. It's a general outline of making sure that we give each water planning topic sufficient time to be addressed, to coordinate with our stakeholders and get the data and maps and tools created. That will be refined as we go through the process. So this is a very high-level general schedule that as we work with the Water Planning Commission, we'll be able to figure out what topics may need more time, what topics can be done fairly quickly, what topics need the digital tools that we're talking about, and where we really need to engage with the public. And the bulk of this that is really going to affect the board is items 15 through 17. And items 15 through 17 really outline the public acceptance process. So we're hoping to have a final draft plan for review by August of 2026, or 2025, excuse me. If we can get the draft reviewed by the Water Planning Commission in August and September, and they'll have a lot of time through the engagement process to already be familiar with what's going into the plan and approve what's going into the plan, so that by the time it gets to, you know, the whole plan review, the comprehensive plan review, they're already familiar with it. They'll make a recommendation to the WRWC for adoption of the plan. When they make that recommendation, we'll go ahead and put the plan out for public comment for 30 days, and we'll bring those public comments back to the Water Planning Commission for review and to determine how to appropriately address them. And then we'll hold a public hearing for them to formally recommend that plan to the WRWC for adoption. And so we're hoping to bring that before the WRWC no later than November, December of 2025, meeting our January 26 deadline. Next slide.
Quick question for you,
Oh, go ahead.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Can I
You're
speak?
permitted.
Thank you. Is there room in the public process for us to be involved before that?
Absolutely, that's a great question.
Can you help show us, and not now necessarily, but as we go, I do think that there's a wisdom of, and it doesn't necessarily, I mean, obviously we can't have a quorum and we can do it correctly, but I think if there's things that we could just be there to hear, to listen, I think it's really wise for people to get to meet us, but also us to hear them. Because the ones that are paying attention, there's not a lot in our community who actually know what they're talking about and paying attention, but they'll be the ones that are coming to these meetings. I'd love to meet them and we have to hear a little bit, so when I'm helping make some of these decisions, I can help represent some of that.
Absolutely, that's a great comment. And one of the things that we'll do throughout the process, again, is as we're getting various chapters and topics updated and discussed, they'll be done through the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission regular meetings. And of course, when I come to the meetings here, I'll be bringing some of those updates to this board. So this won't be the last time you hear about the Water Management Plan update. We'll also work with the Water Planning Commission to see what kind of public engagement, workshops, how we're going to do those pieces as we're completing various planning topics in the plan. So my hope is that we'll come up with a strategy to not only bring this forward during the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meetings, which allows the public to attend and kind of see what the review and update process looks like, what updates are being made, but we'll also bring it to this commission and then hold some outreach, events where we can engage the public. I am. I realized I said next slide, and that's the next item. So, so yes, I'm ready to take questions.
All right, any other question? Yes?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Dewar has? Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Dewar is on the line as well. Thank you. Member Andriola.
Thank you. On item number 11, you refer to the February 2025 cost and financial analysis in terms of, compiling information and looking at those funding needs. And I'm not seeing where there might be an additional review. Is there going to be a certain period of time before it actually comes back for the legal and administrative review to review that information?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. And so like I was hoping as we go along the process, again, I'm going to work with the Water Planning Commission to confirm. As we develop the different topics of the plan, those will, at that time when they're completed, go to an administrative review.
Okay.
So they'll be available for the board. We're going to use our website. Once a planning topic, chapter or draft or however it looks like, whatever the framework is that we use is ready for review, we'll post it to our website, and that'll open up opportunities for the public to comment. It'll open up opportunities for the boards to review it and the Water Planning Commission members to review it. So it will be this ongoing process of transparency and review of those topics.
I appreciate it. I thought it might be in there, but I just thought I'd point that out and
Yeah.
confirm, so thank you.
Totally understandable, yes.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, Member Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is great, and I can't believe that I've been on this board long enough. This is my second update, so thank you for that. I'm really excited about the tools because I have constituents who are not part of the TUMWA system, and I know that there are several board members who are also in that same boat, and there's confusion there. And they don't quite understand how that works with the rest of the water system. So, having those tools and having that access on the website and, making sure that folks know how all of these systems work together and that we do work with these water purveyors and making sure that we have a place for people to go, because right now I don't have quite all the answers for them. So I really look forward to whatever that looks like. And in your brilliance, I'm sure you're going to show us. I can't wait.
Well, thank you. And we're working with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. They do such a great job with like their online dashboard and displaying information. So we're hoping to solicit their help also with, what data we're going to display, how we're going to do that public education outreach piece for our website.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to, let me see, that was number 7. We'll move on to number 8, action, discussion, possible direction to staff for approval of the WRWC tentative budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 to schedule a public hearing for adoption by the WRWC. Kim.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the commission. So this is the exciting part of the meeting, crunching numbers, right? So our budget is fairly simple compared to what you probably see at your other entities. So I'll just do a quick overview and summary of the budget and just highlight some of the changes that were made this year. So we're anticipating our revenues to be about 1.8 million, our expenses 3.1 million, which would leave us with a cash balance of a negative 1.3 million, which always looks a little concerning until you incorporate in what we anticipate our cash reserves to be at the end of this fiscal year. So we're anticipating our cash reserves at the end of this fiscal year to be $2 million, which is pretty standard for us. We are able to maintain $2 million in the bank on a regular basis. I've been kind of tracking that over the last few years because I wanted to see what those fluctuations look like, and it seems to be pretty consistent across the board, so that's good. And with that, that would leave us with a cash balance at the end of fiscal year 25 of $775,207, and that is more than enough to cover the 6 months minimum requirement for our operating costs. It's actually a year's. We decided to be a little bit more conservative and give us a little bit more of a buffer for those operating costs. So it worked out this year. If you turn to page 2 of your packet, this should be super familiar. We went through this back in November with the Water Planning Commission, and this was approved by the boards for the budgets for the different projects. So that's where the 2.4 million in professional services expenses comes from. And on page 3, a couple highlights. Last year, our staff services subtotal went down, even though our salaries have gone up and our benefits have gone up a little bit because we're no longer going to contract with Jim Smitherman. So that was removed from this budget. So that took $50,000 off this go round. So that's why that number was a little bit down. And then you'll notice that the non-staff services was up about $20,000. And so what I did with that extra budget was we've been working really hard to offer opportunities to the boards to do site visits or go to conferences. So we wanted to put in some budget to allow us as a water agency to fund our commissioners to go to water conferences or workshops or activities that would help to broaden, the understanding of what the water planning issues are. So I added a $10,000 budget in both the training and travel to allow for staff and commission members to do that. And so that was generally the biggest change from last year to this year. And, oh, I'm sorry, I should have said next slide on that last one. So that was the one I was just discussing. And then on page 3, we just talked about that. So if you could go one more, I was forgetting that it wasn't transitioning, my apologies. So with that, I will turn it back over to the board for questions and possible motion.
Commissioner Dare.
Yes, so with an ending fund balance of $775,000 coming into next year, you put that together, that gives us one more year at this budget, and then the following year, if you continue down that road, we look interesting. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, it really just depends on how much we end up expending on the professional services. Sometimes it's really interesting how it cycles. So we were doing a 6-month budget or holding a 6 months allotment for the operating budget. We were still consistently at $2 million cash in the bank. We have some projects that we're not quite sure what the budgets are going to look like. The scopes of work haven't come in yet in the professional services budget. So we'll get a better gauge on whether that's going to actually be doable depending on those budgets when they come in. So it kind of,
We kind of have been here every year. I'm kind of asking
Yes.
a question that I know the answer to, but it looks weird from anybody that doesn't know. Because you'll look at this, even someone in the public will be like, you guys in 2 years have no money left. What are you doing?
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not
is what it looks
sustainable.
like.
Right.
But the reality is that it actually continues to overlap. But it does mean that if we ever don't meet that, we'll have to compress what we are able to do. And those years is what happens.
Exactly.
And so I just, like I said, I'm kind of setting you up for a question. I knew the answer, but I think it's important to kind of put those words into place because anybody looking at this would think that we don't know what we're doing. And we do. We've done this for many years and it always has that negative in there and we're always playing that game of catch up. So, but we'll just compress to the budget. We don't have any other income coming. So this is what we have, this is what we use. So all that sound about right?
That sounds perfect. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's exactly what happens.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. On page, I think it's your page 2, the regional, or the Stormwater Permit Coordinating Committee, who is on that?
The Stormwater Permit Coordinating Committee is a regional.
It's all of
board.
us.
It's, all of you guys on that
Okay.
committee. Mhm.
And then the Regional Stormwater Management Program update. So we don't know what that will look like. What's the, can you give me some background on that?
Sure. The driver behind that is NDEP getting a new
Okay.
permit, an updated permit
Got
out.
it.
And until they get that permit out, we don't know what that framework's going to look like.
Okay,
So it's kind of a placeholder. It's been a placeholder for many years.
Right.
Because we just want to make sure it's in the budget for the stormwater committee when the time comes to make sure that they have the funding available
right,
to address the permit.
okay. But we have the name Reno before all of these 3 items.
Mhm.
Is that just because they are the lead? I'm just curious.
It's because we would contract with the
With
city of
Reno,
Reno
'cause
for
they
that
have-
regional effort.
Okay, they have the staff that, they have a stormwater.
Yes, and it's like I'm housed at Washoe County to
Right.
facilitate the Western region. So that program is basically housed at the city of Reno, so they would have the contract for that.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Member Dewar.
Yes. Is this appropriate time to weigh in?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I had just 2 quick questions. One was, Kim, are there any funds in there for any further PFAS work?
There is. So we currently have a $25,000 agreement with Jacobs Engineering. And that will be brought before the board and adjusted as we learn more from EPA and NDEP on what the regulations are going to look like, what guidance they're going to give us. So we need that information to be able to develop that scope of work to see what the community needs are. So that $25,000 is kind of a placeholder, but that will probably come before the board again as we develop that scope of work.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know too that I've asked folks from Reno to contact you because I think almost all of the jurisdictions have entered into some type of legal evaluation of the situation with PFAS in our community, and you may become data central for this. I know you, working with Jacobs, have started collecting information throughout our region, and I just want to make sure that that information is provided to the various jurisdictions as their needs require. So just something to be thinking about. We could talk about later. The second thing I wanted to ask about was the water plan. I know you said this was the beginning of the update of the water plan, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, and I just wondered what type of funding you have in the budget to tackle that challenge.
That's a great question. So on page 2 of the budget, you'll see that there's a line item at near the bottom that says Western Regional Water Commission Regional Water Management Plan. And I have $75,000 budgeted there, as well as under our operating budget, there's $50,000 for support services. So and I did that strategically because for the support services, it could be the development of those tools on our website that we'll be continually using as an operational cost versus hiring a consultant to help us with like the cost and finance information. So we'll be contracting with various consultants to help us with various aspects of the plan.
Okay. And would you refresh us on when you hope to bring that in for landing? In other words, when would that come before us as a commission for our first look?
When would
the water plan? I know it's a multi-year effort. So
yes, it's a multi-year effort. So the plan is to have a draft available by August of 2025 for the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. Of course, they'll be reviewing it over the next year and a half and be really familiar with it at that point. Have extensive engagement and public outreach during that process as well. And then we'll bring the plan before the Western Regional Water Commission for adoption in November or December.
So that's really, is that about a 2-year process? I mean, you went into a different fiscal year, right?
Yeah, I'm talking calendar year on this plan update,
Oh,
not
okay.
fiscal year.
Okay, so, but I mean, it should cover probably 2 fiscal budgets, it sounds like.
Yes, yes.
This one and then the next one?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I know with your additional tools with the website, you should be able to do even more outreach. And water is ever present on people's minds in terms of, do we have enough? How are we managing our storage? How do we compare to other regions? So I think this update is going to be very important. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Andriola, did you have a question also?
I do. Thanks. I just have a quick question. I don't know how long I can keep on saying I'm new, so I don't know what the time frame is, but I'm going to use it as I just have a very simple question. You mentioned, and then it's also on page 1, that the required minimum 6-month operating budget, meets what you've outlined here. And I'm wondering, when you use the word required, where is that coming from? Is it something that's in policy? Is there a reserve amount that the board has previously, the committee has previously put into place? What guidelines are you referring to with the required minimum?
I can answer that. Okay. It's actually best practice.
No, I know it's best
well, no,
practice, but I'm just asking if there's like a document.
No, there's not. That's
Okay.
my point. My point is, when we over the years have said this is what we just want to keep, it's just
Okay.
been best practice. I don't believe there's a paper that says anything that I've
Okay.
ever seen, and so because I've been on here for a long time. So with that said, it's something we can tweak. We could put a paper, but it's always kind of been to our discretion. But 6 months was what we have encouraged everyone to do.
My question is that sometimes, obviously, when you're using the word required, that indicates that there's a policy that supports that. And that's all I was trying to clarify. So I think sometimes it's good because it is such a very tight budget, on contingencies, that certainly appear that they have a historical path of consistency, but, you know, if you find a crystal ball, I'd like to share that with you. But I do appreciate you mentioning that you did look at the consistency, and it appears that it doesn't really fluctuate as much. I don't know, it's something that is just a minor comment, but I think sometimes, just in the spirit of having different folks come in, that having some things that are codified in terms of policy help with guidelines. That doesn't mean they can't change and they can't be altered, but I think that that is something to be considered. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I would actually put that along the lines of the best practices. I agree with what she just said. Yes, it's great that you have the knowledge like Mr. Dare. I didn't know that, and I've been on this for a few years as well. I thought that it actually was our policy that was embedded there. But thank you. Any other questions? All right. So this is an action item. Anyone care to take a stab at the motion that we have before us?
I'll do it. I move to approve the draft WRWC tentative budget for FY25, direct staff to submit and file the tentative budget as required by statute and provide notice as required by law for the public hearing on the tentative budget to be held Thursday, May 23rd, 2024 at 9 a.m.
All right, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Measure passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 9, Program Manager Update. Kim, you're still with us.
I'm still here, thank you. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on a couple of items. It shouldn't take too long. We've nailed down, we think, a tentative date for, we had talked about April 4th for the next Advanced Purified Water site visits, tours, and that date ended up not working out. So we revisited it, and now we've got a date tentatively scheduled with these 3 different facilities for May 16th. And we're looking at a one-day trip where we can fly out of Reno around 8 o'clock in the morning, but we wouldn't be able to get back in until around 9 o'clock in the evening. So it makes for a very long day and a lot of trips involved. But I think these facilities are state-of-the-art. They're great facilities to visit. Some of the members have already visited these facilities, and so we're going to offer this up to our commission, Water Planning Commission members, but really we want to engage NDEP and additional staff at the agency so that they can get familiar with some of the aspects of the Learning Center and the processes. So I just wanted to give you a quick highlight on that. I'll be sending out information, obviously soliciting travel information from anybody that's interested in participating in that.
Member Dewar? Oh, Dewar.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes,
I
Member
am
Dewar
here.
is here with us now.
And
But
I'm continuing, I just want to thank you for leading the meeting today. I'm sorry I was unavoidably detained.
confused. I've got Dewar and Dare next to me here. So Member Dare.
Yes. One of the things I would just encourage all of us, one of the things that go into these helps, a lot of us have seen these and probably hear about these, but the relationship that's formed when we get to hang out with NDEP and state agencies, and we actually walk with them, talk with them, get to see their mind and brain, it helps these guys a lot. So just something to keep in mind, whether like I've been to one, and in my mind, I feel like when I've seen one, I've probably seen them all, you know, I mean, kind of, however, I'm really consider going, mainly because of who else you have going, just for relationship's sake, to show, as we're talking in the future, that we're on together. So just a thought.
Thank you. Okay, next
Back to
slide.
you.
There's one more slide, and then I will hand it back over to you for questions. So this is just an update. We informed the board that we were going to the Water Reuse Symposium in Denver. We did that last week. It was really an amazing experience. We really focused on attending the communication track, and I was able to sit with Member Anderson most of the time, and there was a lot of really great takeaways, and there's a few nuggets that really stuck with me. One was, come out from behind the fence. And what that meant for me was we have amazing staff and leaders in this community that are really on the forefront of these projects and really dedicated to ensuring the sustainability of our water resources. And this is not always in the public view, because how do you make, people interested in water planning issues without there being a challenge. Sometimes until something breaks, people are just focused on, okay, I've got my service and that's all I need to know. But really coming out from behind the fence, inviting people to view our world and to see what we're doing it's a challenge to figure out how to do that, but it's important for them to know what good work that our community is doing. So that was a big takeaway for me. Get the word out. Let's try to figure out ways to invite our community in behind the fence so that they can see these amazing state-of-the-art facilities that we have and the amazing staff that we have that's performing the work that keeps them in operation. So I know, Member Anderson, I just wanted to give you a couple minutes to comment on your experience.
I have a 15-minute slideshow, so hang on a little bit. No, actually, I've got a question before I make a comment on it. So you have listed a workshop. So is that referring to the symposium, or are you envisioning a workshop maybe for the board or something like that? That actually, because I think that you talk about nuggets. For me, it was the communication points. You know, being able to have a clear, concise, keep it simple type message that we as a community are voicing. And that's what I saw a workshop and I'm like, man, I think that's actually, I understand you're talking about the symposium workshops, but I think it would actually be helpful if we had something like that as well, that if you'd consider that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely work with the partners and see if we can put together a workshop for our public officials and leadership so that we can talk more about it openly in a workshop setting rather than always in the public, setting here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Member Dewar.
Thank you. I want to concur with that. I think it's a great idea. And a number of years ago, we did have a workshop, I want to say even 5. And I remember quite a few members of the board were able to attend, and we brought in water professionals throughout the community and region, and even other regions, to talk about what they're doing. And it was really good. It was very focused on local stuff and what our challenges are specifically, what our answers are. And in earlier iterations of this committee, that often happened. I'm going back 10, 15, 20 years to the beginning of this, which was to answer Member Andriola's question earlier. I mean, we are a legislatively required commission. They wanted to make sure we were doing a good job with water. And in the early days, we often had presentations from DEP, State Engineer's Office, and so on to talk about bigger water policy issues. And that might be a great adjunct. And I know that the Nevada Water Resources Association, I'm sure you're a member, does a whole series, but a lot of those talks are more technical and less kind of policy planning driven. What's your thought on that?
No, I agree completely. And I think the audience, when you're talking to engineers and scientists as a staff, the technical presentations are very important, but they really, it became very apparent at the symposium too, the importance of having a communication track that was really geared towards public officials and communication and outreach firms. And that was really helpful. So I do think that that's something that we could do, where we could bring in some of especially during the Regional Water Management Plan update, maybe that's what we use as the launching point and the setting for engaging the board, and we create a workshop where we can talk about the different planning topics in the plan and incorporate some presentations from the agencies that actually implement those programs.
Right.
And then you can have like a question and answer session.
Right, geared more to us, less geared to super techno stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we'll think about how we're going to get that
When,
done.
where.
Okay, now I start my slideshow.
Please.
No, actually, I mean, I just wanted to touch on a few things. So some of the messages, it was so interesting because we were hearing from people literally around the world that were talking about their successes and their, I wouldn't say failures, but their struggles that they had throughout the process, and be able to pull some of that information from them. So there were some things that you just kept hearing over and over again. Engage early and often. That even though this seems like such a far-off project, that we need to be actively engaged within our community now, letting them know the message. And then they talked about that you don't tell them, but show them. And that was actually one of the things that came crystal clear to me, was the importance of a robust visitor center that is an education tool as well, so that you can invite people in. Instead of me standing here telling you how wonderful it is and what we're doing, you're actually able to give people hopefully even a hands-on experience to come in and embrace the concept of where we're going. But also talking about the why, the how, those kind of things, so that people can truly understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the importance of that. And that visitor center, I know we're talking about dollars, but for those of you that haven't seen the facility, it's Orange County is the one that is amazing. I can't imagine how much, I don't know if you ever heard the amount that they spent, but I'm sure it's significant. But what's so incredible is they actually have people that want to come in and hold events there. So now you're not only bringing the public in, but they're wanting to be there because it's such an incredible facility. So that's one that I just want us to consider as we start looking at how do we fund these different projects.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Member Dewar, just at our last city council meeting, which was, a day ago, I guess we spoke about it on Monday, actually, at our budget hearing. But the city voted to participate in the One Water Nevada program, that Advanced Purified Water. And we agreed to bring, I want to say $80 million in cash and $70 million that would be bonded. And we voted to approve that. That has to go through the Debt Management Commission. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that there was an increased cost. And that increased cost was for a visitor center. Now, I don't know what that visitor center would look like, what it would, how, is it a mobile structure, or is it a full-on building the size of this one? Which is really where we were, a building the size of this one, even bigger. I doubt it's that, but, and it could serve a dual purpose. We've needed a community center out in the North Valleys, and maybe, to your point about having meeting room space, maybe it would be able to incorporate those kind of needs too for our residents in the north that don't have a lot of places to meet. People, in addition, they often go to the airport, the Reno Stead Airport out there. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that we just, committed $80 million to this project and another $70 million in bond. That includes some type of information center. So.
No, and thank you, because that actually is a perfect segue to one of the things I wanted to talk about. Because for me in Sparks, a lot of the conversation was about the American Flats project and that. It's like, well, it's not in Sparks. It's not our water. We're not dealing with it. But again, one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again is water knows no boundaries. And truly, the way that I see it, and I believe my counterparts in Sparks do as well, is that yes, this is a Reno, Washoe County, Tumwa project, but it's bigger than that. That the things that we're learning and doing there can be implemented throughout our community. And that likewise, I think we as a community as a whole have to take part in that. And that we're all, whether it's the messaging, the involvement, I don't know if I'd say finances, but no, but in all honesty, we need to be looking at these things on a regional basis, even a project like what you've got going up there.
Well, and I'll just say this about that, it's really driven by the two wastewater plants. So we have the Reno Stead plant, and then we have the county plant, which I think they want to decommission because it's really past its useful life and using very old technology to treat water. But the other side of that, of course, is it's called the A+ water, and it's the advanced water treatment. The focus is on ultimately not just discharging water, but reusing water to drinking water standards. And of course, Sparks residents drink all the same water that we do that comes from Tumwa. So you should have great interest in at least half this project. And ultimately, maybe more of your sewage from Sparks won't go to, where you're discharging it now, but we may have challenges with the river, in other words. We know we're gonna have limits out at, Tumwharf, and so you may end up setting water up there to be treated, so it might not be specifically you today, but I can't imagine it stays that way for long.
And you're right, and that was actually one of the things that we had a lot of conversation about, was a lot of these facilities that have gone from the indirect potable to direct. So it's, again, kind of a change in concept, and It's obviously going to be a different kind of messaging, and again, we're talking years down the road, but I think those are the kind of conversations that we as a region need to be having now and figure out where we want to go with it down in the future. So with that, I mean, yeah, I truly could probably go on for 50 minutes. It was really great. Yes, I ended up in one that started on communications and it turned technical. And I'm like, okay, I have not a clue what y'all are talking about. But it was wonderful because my traveling counterparts, some were here with us today, that were very generous with their time and letting me ask lots of questions. And I will be seeing Lydia in the next meeting here. But it was wonderful. We had dinner, and I was surprised she was able to eat because I just kept asking more and more questions about the more technical side, the process of what we're going to be doing in comparison to. And that was the cool thing about those field trips. Yes, the ones that we saw in California were great, but these facilities that we saw, the Aurora and Castle Peak, or Castle Rock, excuse me, were facilities that were a lot closer to what we're doing. So that it was better to be able to actually see, okay, now you're not shipping the brine into the ocean or having to haul it off. What are the processes that you're going through? So it was interesting to be able to see that side as well. So I'm very glad I was able to be a part of it. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that as well. And yeah, for my fellow traveling companions, I appreciate your help there. So well done. Any other questions before we move on? And is that the end of your report?
That is it. No.
Okay.
Well said.
So then, let's move on to the next item. I got everything all jumbled up here. So we're at discussion, possible direction to staff regarding agenda items and dates for future WRWC meetings.
Thank you. Members of the commission, I just wanted to real quickly throw up our calendar. I'm trying to show the full year calendar every time we get together, so you can, I put little check marks next to the ones that we've completed. Next month in April, we don't really have any pressing items. That doesn't mean pressing items won't come up, so I just wanted to let you know that that meeting may or may not take place. I did want to run by you that I would like to cancel the May 15th meeting because we are holding our budget hearing on May 23rd, which I think we can go ahead and address anything that needs to be addressed during that meeting time. So with that, I would just wanted to give you that information and turn it over to the board for any recommendations on future meeting agenda items or things you would like to hear about.
Commissioner Dare.
The only thing that I want to make sure that when it comes to legislation or state legislation that's coming up, I'd be interested in hearing how we are continuing to relationally walk with things. Obviously, PFAS we talked about. That's a conversation that I know DC's having quite a bit. I think you might be aware, but I got the honor of going and I got to hear some of it, but truthfully, I'd love it interpreted through our vein of what we're walking through. But just also, if we wait until legislation begins to say, okay, we're going to stand up, we're too late. So if there's anything we want to make sure we stand on, now's the time to talk about that. So I don't know if you were thinking of that, but I'm asking if we can start pretty soon talking about what legislation looks like for us.
Sure.
Thank you.
And kind of going off of that, I would just add, yeah, keeping us involved as much as possible so that we can be the advocate or a voice as well. So
That sounds good. Would you like me to try to plan something for the May meeting then? We'll have the budget hearing and then we can try to figure that out.
Let me ask, what kind of time? Usually we only have like half hour, I thought.
We have an hour for that
Oh.
meeting. So, and then we can't really schedule it any earlier because the Flood Management Authority has their.
Do you
budget
have a
hearing.
time for the budget meeting?
It's 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Oh, 9 to 10.
Yeah, on May 23rd.
So also on that calendar, I have that we also have Tumwa, I guess at 10 to 12 that day. And we have flood, as you said. So, okay, 9 is this one. Okay, well, if we have time, I would support that.
We don't have a lot of agenda items for that particular meeting. We have the budget hearing. If something comes up, of course, I'll include it on the agenda, but
It's just a beginning conversation.
sure.
all right. Any other? Yes, Commissioner Hill.
I may have a problem going to the budget meeting, and so we have RTC also that morning, their budget hearing. For some reason, every single budget hearing is on that day, and I'm on every single one of those boards. So yes, I will see if I can get an alternate to come. If you have a concern about quorum, I guess could you just let me know if that's something I need to do?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll have Jen do a quorum check with everybody.
But let me ask this, I mean, usually all the agencies work so there aren't overlapping. Could we have RTC meet with,
Yeah, we could try to
and just
figure
see,
that out.
usually that's why flood's at 8:30, this one's at 9, the 10, Tom one's at 10. Maybe yours could be a 1,
Right. So we'll see.
We'll check in with everybody.
Okay.
Okay,
before that.
thank you so much.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, Kim. We're gonna move on to public comment. Do we have any other No, we don't. All right, commissioner comments. All right, with that, staff comments. Staff.
No staff comments.
All right, with that, then we're gonna go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Paul.
No.